I am not sure. Hello, how are you? I hope you're all doing well. I'm not sure the extent that my talk yesterday was well put together, you know. So hopefully, I communicated what I needed to communicate. I was very happy to find in my own writing the following claim. Coalition, this I've been thinking about a video. So what a video said to me, really made me complicated things, and so hopefully what I've done, it's an adequate response. But I found this quote, a video in my own writing that says, coalition is always the horizon that rearranges our possibilities and the conditions of those possibilities. Isn't that great? that I found that. So anyway, let's begin. So it's important thinking about the politics of coalition among women of color today, that we take up intersectionality. We cannot go directly to coalition without thinking about intersectionality and the relation that for Crenshaw, intersectionality has with coalition, and then what I have to say about that. Okay, so I am relying, I taught a graduate seminar on intersectionality, and then I read with my students all of this new material that has come up lately. Yes, so the Crenshaw, which we waited for her a new book forever, but it didn't come on time for the seminar. But I'm looking at now. May, she wrote an interesting book on intersectionality. Karastatis. Karastatis is I think it's a very good text. I don't know, Walter, whether you have looked at that book, but it's the one book that I know of that includes you thinking about decoloniality and coalition and intersectionality.
What is that book? What is the book?
The book is called Intersectionality. Yeah.
Anakarastatis, no?
And it's Anakarastatis, yeah. Mm-hmm. With a T, with an H after the last T. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anakarastati.
Karastatis, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think she has read us pretty carefully, So then I have to begin then with intersectionality, not to invoke intersectionality seriously at this point is to ignore Black feminism. Black feminism is intersectional. Even though, Puar is doing her own thing with assemblages, yes, I think intersectionality is staying its ground. And I think it's a good thing that it's staying its ground. I'm not sure I understand quite the logic of assemblages yet. but nevertheless, and how it relates to our understanding of the structure and the heterogeneous totalities, but nevertheless, that's what Puar relies on, you know. So, I mean, I think that's not taking, except with a you know, a group of folks, yeah. You know, the thinking about intersectionality has a history among Black women. You know, maybe you can say since, you know, since Sojourner Truth. And then, you know, other women like Bill, like Deborah King, you know, then the Combahee River Collective, you know, all women who have thought that, you know, once we realized that white women's feminism was not for us, that there was something wrong with it, yes, then I think the thinking about the intersection became a very useful thing, yes, because it took us in a direction of rethinking ourselves, yes. I don't think it has done enough, but nevertheless, it has been a good step, not particularly one I think that I think it wouldn't be a good thing if it stays there, yeah. But it's difficult to find one's way into the conversation, into that conversation. Yeah. One of the things, you know, so let me just begin very simply about intersectionality. How many of you, let me see all of you together. Why is it that you are so big, Walter, and I can't see anybody else?
I have no idea. I am bigger than the others.
It's your aura. No,
you need to click. You need to click gallery view.
Yeah, I pushed that arrow, but the arrow doesn't do anything, and I don't see the gallery. The gallery is not here.
No, at the top right, you have speaker view, gallery view, so you can press the little squares, and it will change.
Which one is the first? Okay, I'll press this one.
The top right.
Okay, now you are big. Gallery view. Here, gallery view. Okay, so I see the whole of it, or at least, you know, quite a few of you. So, how many of you understand intersectionality? Okay, enough don't that I want to, you know, give an account of it from Crenshaw, yes? And then maybe we stop a few minutes, and the ones of you who think that you understand intersectionality, maybe you can, you know, say things or, you know, ask questions, yes? Okay, so when I first read Mapping the Margins, yes, this is what I came up with. And after all, I have stuck with it because I think it's a very productive reading. So I understand Crenshaw to be using the categorical thinking of modernity, yes, the categories, yes, and now putting them at an intersection. So think of the category gender, giving us a woman, and that woman, make it like a class, you know, but it's not a class, it's a category. All round, yes, and then put race in black, yes, you know, like that, yes. So then the Black woman yes, is then that at that intersection. Yes, you see it? Yeah, okay. So what is at that intersection? Well, it cannot be a being that is part white woman and part black man, right? That is a monstrosity. You know, Mary Daly, in her, you know, all times humor, thought that at the intersection lies, you know, a monstrosity that is made of now I forget the name of the actors. I have the picture in my mind. John Travolta, and the other one was some babe, you know, that was all, you know, feminized. No, that's not possible. That's not what it is, yes? Yet, Crenshaw does think, and I think, you know, many of us agree with her, that the category woman, yes, is all about white women. Yes, that it can't be about all women. So what does it mean? Yes, and what it means, that category covers the experiences and the conditions of white women and renders a set of issues that are understood to be women's issues. Yes, so it isn't just about the composition of the person. Yes, it's about the concept, the thinking of the landscape of what is it that troubles her. Yes, so for example, being not sexually active. Yes, that is in bed, I mean, yes. You know, this sense of being sexually passive, yes. So there's all this work by white women on making themselves more proactive, you know, at the whole thing having to do with sex. Then they are for the domestic, so they get out of the domestic. You know, that is the program is getting out of the domestic. Yes. So you know, then you can see that, yeah, for women of color, what they don't have an image of themselves. Yes, they want to be, you know, white men. So they look for the same jobs, their same things, you know, whatever. Yeah. And the problems are the problems that are circumscribed really to their sex. Yes, very significantly. Yes, the women's problems. Yes, have to do with violation, with rape, and with battering. Yeah. And all of that has a history, makes it understandable, and so on. It is also, I want to argue that here, but it's a modern understanding of the female, the human female. So when we decided this has nothing to do with us, yes, then the intersection between that woman that I just told you about, yes, and the black man, because we're talking about black feminism, yes? Black man, yes, as the counterpart, the being that, as it were, has more of has acquired with time, yes, in the US, more of an existence within the apparatus of, you know, like having a voice, for example, that is a public voice, yes, being able to, you know, it's no longer, it's just the father missing, yes? It's also a being that has a presence, yes, in the civil society, yeah? So then we put them together, and at that intersection, we cannot get a combination of the two. That's not a possibility. That's a monstrosity. It's nothing, yes? But notice, yes, immediately that when I talk of fragmentation, I talk of categorical fragmentation, yes? So that, you know, beings, communities are all, you know, in shards, because, you know, their parts, their race part, their gender part, all of those things are, you know, not together. Yes, so you have a fragmented being, and that fragmented being can't really have not just no voice, can't have really, it's not a person, right? It's a being that is a compound, you know, of different shards that it can't really have any agency in the modern sense of urgency. That is, the world is not made for her, yes? She wants something and intends something, not there. Yes, not there, yes? While, you know, the white woman intends something and it's there. She can become a CEO. It exists as a possibility. It fits, yes? So then you can think, what are the women of color possibilities? What are the Black women possibilities? And you can see the extent to which for, you know, Black women and men, you know, the possibilities haven't, for many people, instead of being rethought, they have been, you know, turned into forms of mimesis. Yes. And while much of, you know, Black men's life has been different. It's different from what it is that the society has to offer. But there are, yes, a significant, you know, and I think that's one of the things that I think you see, John, yes, that there is a significant presence of Black men who, instead of being missing, you know, have been replaced by men with an agenda and, you know, an activity that is not real. You know, and then, so, I mean, I wonder, for example, about all of these movies that are coming out, you know, all of these things, you know, so many things with Black people, and you think, is it that they're really being taken in as they, or is it that this is just a form of mimesis that, you know, it gives them a room, yeah? So, so far so good about the intersection, yes? So that we can't have the intersection between these two categories, yes? Where everything in there is white women and Black men, yes? And that finds the woman of color. So for me, what we find at the intersection is an absence, yes? So that women of color as such do not exist, yes, in the society. They don't exist as women, but largely they don't exist they are rapeable. Sorry, they're non-rapeable because their rape doesn't count. Yes, Crenshaw tells us at the time of the Central Park rape, this is all news, many, many days of news. And at the same time, a Black woman was gang raped in the 5th floor and then thrown out the window. And there was no news about it. Yes, she was not rapeable. Yes, that's part of the, what's the protection of the state? You know, there is no protection. Yes, when the helicopters are flying over your neighborhood, you know, there is no protection. Yeah. So let me see then, stop for a second here and let's see if how this meshes with your understanding of intersectionality. But let's not be too long because there is too much to say. It's helpful for me to see how is it that is important to you, yes? Certainly the move to intersectionality is a fantastic move, yes? Because all of a sudden, we have the first time in which we can give voice, yes, to what the woman of color is not. Yes, she is not an addition of categories of oppression that are separable in them. Though, you know, power, raises power, attempts to do that, to turn her into all of these shards. Yes, but that's not what she is. But nevertheless, it raises the question. So she is something different. What is she? Right, Miriam? Yes, that's what she does, what this move does. And then it is a step, yes. We were already separating from the movement, but now we have a very good reason to separate from the movement because we were now in that task of finding out, yes, what it is, and that women of color. And particularly in the case of Black women, yes, they had initiated that, and they had initiated it with Crenshaw at the point of the law. It's not a bad point to start, a limiting point, yes, but nevertheless, a very interesting point to start, yes. Where's the protection? Yeah. But then, I gave you her book and I now can't remember her name. For Walter. Anyway, she
Anacarastasis.
No, not Karastatis. No. This is a Black woman who has, you know, she teaches in Illinois, Chicago, and she has devoted, you know, all her time to the taking women, Black women out of prison, yes, who have killed their husbands or their lovers, or, you know. So when she is looking at them, yes, she is looking at women who have been slowly, you know, like taken away from the movement and all of the services. The important thing are the services. Yes. So every state in the U.S. has, you know, an agency that is about violence against women. So there is a lot of money, and that money goes where? It doesn't go to women of color. Yes, and the hospitals, you know, they don't take care of you. Yes, so all kinds of agencies, yes, have thrown women of color out. Yeah. You know, she pictures her, yes, as a woman who is, the cops come to, you know, a cop comes to her house and tells her she has to evacuate her place because the building is going to be destroyed. And she says, I am not leaving. And I'm not leaving, and I'm not leaving, and she's not leaving, yes. And he says, the building is going to be destroyed. And she says, if you tell me where I'm going, that is not the street, I'll go. But you're putting me in the street, so I'm not going, yes? So then the next day, all these cops come and, you know, rape the shit out of her, yes? That's image, yes? And so she goes to the streets, yes? We had in the Escuela Popular a year in which all these women came, all women of color came to think about violence against women, particularly about battering, you know? And at some point, you know, the women put together a map, yes, of where is it that the battered woman of color, you know, is her trajectory, yes? And her trajectory always ends in, you know, a street, you know, the shelter at some point, but the shelter is like, you know, a little time there that doesn't do anything for you. You know, it's not, if you're a woman of color, it doesn't do anything for you. If you are all trained for a vocation and then being there, you can rearrange your life, you can rethink things and go and, you know, have some job. If you're a woman of color, that's not it, yes. You go to a place that is particularly unfriendly to you. You know, a place where your way of being, your customs, your, you know, your knowledges don't mean anything, yes. Where you are, you know, all of the food is under key, you know, so the whole thing is, you know, some of the women say, I'd rather be with my butler, yes, because at least she's in her house and, you know, she has some access to whatever, you know, the little things that she has, you know. This person, yes, is the person, Beth is her first name, I can't remember her last name. Anyway, Ritchie, Beth Ritchie, there it is, yes. Beth Ritchie was reading her, you know, this book. Because, you know, you want to know the coloniality, you know, for Black women today, there is a, you know, really a significant slice of it there, you know, and that's, I think, always worth reading. So there we are, yes, with the intersectionality, yes, has shown a negation, yes, a being that we do not understand, a being that does not exist socially, yes, a being that anything can be done to her, you know, all kinds of things can be denied, including, of course, respect at every single level, yes. Her body, yes, it can be invaded in any old way, yes. Her nutrition, you know, the things that go into her soul, that go into her body, you know, are minimal, and they are always unhealthy, yeah. So you can see why, you know, going to church means something completely different, right? Going to church is a very different experience that it would be, you know, for somebody who sees, you know, fundamentalism among white peoples who are Protestant and doesn't like it. Yeah, very different experience. Okay, so I want to then move on. So not only is it the case, yes, that this negation is the woman of color, yes, but the oppressions that are talked about, yes, are talked about as experienced simultaneously. Yes, the simultaneity of the experience of oppression, yes, becomes constitutive of her in this version. Yes, so as she's constituted by both, yes, or many or more, yes. For Crenshaw, she says, ableism, should be, can be one, for Hill Collins, belonging to a particular nation can also be one. Yes, there is this simultaneity, yes, of oppressions. Yes, and so the experience is constituted by this multiplicity of oppressions. Yes, so you have a picture, you have a sense, yes, of what it is that happens to this person. How is it that her experience is complicated by the people in her society? And this is what Crenshaw captures. What she captures is that I said all of this, that's great. Page 1. What she captures is that anti-racist positions and movements, they reaffirm the patriarchy. And anti-sexist movements, they bolster the racism. Let me see how it's put. So, something that goes together with that is, that, when you think of the law, now the law will protect Black women only to the extent that the experiences, quote unquote, coincide with that of white women or Black men. And that coincides, of course, very problematic, right? But I want to go to that point about the anti-racism. Okay, so here it is. So I'll read it because it's nicely said. And I think this is probably Karastatis thinking of Crenshaw. To the extent that anti-racist feminism and legal discourses center implicitly on subjects whose racial oppression is inflected by gender privilege, or on subjects whose gender oppression is mitigated by racial privilege, single axis contestations of discrimination of oppression reproduce the social hierarchies rather than undermining them. Anti-racism reproduces patriarchy and feminisms reproduce racism. Mm-hmm. So women of color are asked to choose between two analyses, each of which constitutes a denial of our subordination. That's a very interesting and important consequence, yes, of the intersectionality. yes, of the move towards intersectionality. Yes. Let me see, I have another if. Yes, I have an if here that I wanted to read you. It's about the same thing. If gender is autonomous for race, then gender assumes racial privilege. Presupposes an analysis of systems of oppression that privilege the experience of normative subjects unburdened by and even benefiting from oppression on the other axes. The assumption that racial oppression is autonomous assumes a view of racial oppression inflected by privilege, by gender privilege. Privilege is rendered invisible by the false universalization of that normative experience, making the categories of race and gender seem mutually exclusive, because racial and gender oppressions are constructed as mutually exclusive. Yes? If you want to read anything, just let me know, yes? Okay, so this is a very important point for us, yes? That is that what, Crenshaw, Hill Collins, the Combahe, all of these Black women thinking about the interlocking of oppressions or the intersection, intersection is the term that took, yes, are looking then at the world with these glasses, yes, this perception, yes, and now see things, yes. One of the things that they see then is that the movement, for example, the anti-prison movement, yes, is not paying any attention to women. So, that doesn't mean, that's not because women of color are not in the prisons. They are the majority of people in the prisons, like men of color are the majority of people in the prisons. So it is rather, yes, that they're not caring, yes, they are not seeing, yes, women of color apart from white women, yes, apart from this movement that they don't like, the white feminist movement, yes, then they, they concentrate on race, and concentrating on race meaning not concentrating on, on questions of gender. So, the separation of the agendas, yes, you have separate agendas, yes, for both the, the white feminist movement and, all of the different versions of the Black feminist movement. And so the worry, Jan, about, Black Lives Matter being a lot of men, and some of you have also expressed that, is a significant worry, yeah? As to where we're going, in terms of who is this being, yes, that doesn't exist and that is over and over and over and over, yes, taken away from her possibilities, yes. Her possibilities, mind you, yes, so far are the possibilities of a person, yes. So far they are not communal possibilities in the intersection, yeah. So anyway, for Crenshaw, the fact, and she takes this as a fact, yes, that intersectionality has moved inside, yes, the relations among Black men and Black women, straight folks and folks who are, you know, I still don't remember the word that I use to identify people. Myself, you know, people who not just digress, you know, the people who do not understand themselves in the terms of the heterosexual nation state, and so on. Yeah. So you have then all these folks, yes, who are there is a way in which they are not seen from the inside. Yes, they are not seen as to how do they work, you know, in these circumstances. Hill Collins assumes like an existentialist, you know, a self that, you know, is not affected by anything, and now from this, you know, wholeness, then chooses things. But that's a liberal understanding of the self, of the person who is in this state of, you know, being bitten, you know, being taken apart, and so on. Then but for Hill Collins, she appeals to the Black women having a resonance with the term community. Yes, and so she thinks that the Black woman, yes, in the conditions of living under the matrix of domination constituted by these two axes of oppression, the race and gender oppression, that she is wise. And in her experiences, that is, experience is a very important term here in the intersectionality discourse, yes? Experience is, and how is it that you understand your experience, how you handle it, yes? And then how is it that all these women's understanding of their experience amounts to something that she calls a standpoint. It's a problematic understanding because standpoint here is always problematic, yeah? But nevertheless, you know, it calls, you know, the ways in which Black women understand their condition. And she thinks of intellectuals as necessarily having to have a connection with community, with that community, in order to be people that you listen to for this, yeah? And then when you think about this community, it's not a territorial community because Black people haven't had a territory, yes? So, I mean, you can see what happened in New Orleans and how it is that that community, that, you know, all of those buildings that were Black people that were completely destroyed, yes, is so significant, yes, because those neighborhoods where people own their houses and they have a, you know, a neighborhood, yes, are very rare, destroyed, yes, destroyed. And then when you think about that destruction, yes, seeing the bodies floating in the river takes a very different meaning, yes. People who have been denied territory, when land was being given away to people from everywhere in Europe, you know, all of these, you know, Scandinavians running in Minnesota, you know, looking for a place where to, you know, put their stick and say, this is my land, yes. Black people weren't allowed to do that, yes. So, you know, the bodies on the river, yes, are I mean, we have to think about it, you know, differently. You know, that this is just seeing the third world in the US, you know. That's not what it is. You know. Anyway, so in the Street Walker, the piece that I had you read, I say in page 226, I say, oppressions interlock. I had this difference between interlock and intermesh, yes? So oppressions interlock. The interlock is for the categorial, you know, fragmentation, yes? Oppressions interlock when the social mechanisms of oppression fragment the oppressed both as individuals and collectivities. Social fragmentation in its individual and collective inhabitations is the accomplishment of the interlocking of oppression. Interlocking is conceptually possible only if oppressions are understood as separable, as discrete, as pure. Underline the pure, yes? Intermeshed oppressions cannot be cogently understood as fragmenting subjects, either as individuals or as collectivities. Thus, the interlocking of oppressions is a mechanism of control, reduction, immobilization, disconnection that goes beyond intermeshed oppressions. It's not merely an ideological mechanism, but the categorical training of human beings into homogeneous fragments, and is grounded in a categorical mind frame. Yeah. So then you can see that for me, yes, the street. I found the street a place where people, you know, lived their lives. Those who were, what's the word when you go to a bar and there are these people that go every time? So that are your regulars in the street, yes? So that, you know, you can sit down somewhere in all of the, you know, places that there are in the city to sit down with other people who are often just there and often just speaking their story, you know, in repetitions, you know, in sometimes in metaphors, but always in this very raw way that, you know, it's very difficult to understand, yes? And if you put yourself into it, yes, and you want to, yes, think with this person, be with this person in a way that it isn't just about fitting, yes? Then, you know, there you find people, you know, where you can connect, you can be with them, you can, you know, you can learn, certainly. You can learn not just them, but one of the things that you can learn is them, yeah? And one of the things also is I was struck, yes, by, you know, at the, you know, the height of the hip hop movement, you know, the graffiti writing and so on. At Binghamton, I had, you know, a lot of students that were central to it, yes, all kind of students of color, yeah. And we invited them all to the Escuela Popular, you know, and with, you know, their organizations and magazines and so on, yeah. And they, one of the things that they taught me is, you know, smoking reefer in a way that, you know, that circle was a circle of learning, right? You know, very important place for learning, yes. You weren't just sitting there or standing there, you know, smoking reefer. You were there, you know, thinking. You were there, you know, on your feet. You were there inside your possibilities, thinking, you know, putting things out, you know. So you can see how that experience is a really good experience, you know, that I learned in the street. And in the street, I felt that I wasn't going to be raped. I was going to be raped in the house I went to. I wasn't going to be beaten up. You know, I was going to be beaten up by my father. So really, you know, the street seemed like a marvel, you know, to me, you know, where, you know, I became religious in a kind of mystical way, you know, because I wanted to have in God, you know, a companion, somebody to think with, to be with, you know, in this different fashion. When I was, you know, a kid, you know, and that's one of the things, one of the ingredients that took me to the insane asylum, because my father was a positivist, and I was an aberration to him, you know, not just sexually, but also with this religious thing. And I felt in the street, yes, that I have found this God thing, yes. You know, talking with people, going through life in this really difficult way, yes, who had made a kind of peace with it, yes, and these young people who were all into, you know, painting the city, going and bombing the subways, you know, hanging from the bridges, putting their names on them, you know, but then thinking about it, you know, that sense, you know, that when I ceased to be religious, because I couldn't get this God to talk to me, sorry. So anyway, I mean, I was interested in the liberation theology because it offers something, yes, that you could have conversations, yes, and that's a nice story. I have nice stories with respect to that. With indigenous peoples, and you know, in the Argentinian Andes, you know, thinking together, people coming, walking from miles and miles and miles, you know, to be in Pumamarca, in this little place where, you know, we could cook together, you know, and then in the morning we studied the Bible, and then we talked about questions, and importantly, questions of colonization. So, you know, in the morning, one time that I was there, one guy said, "Isn't the Bible colonial?" You know, I mean, in his own ways, he said, you know, "Isn't the Bible colonial?" You know, why is it that we pay so much attention to this when we didn't have it before, you know? So now let me take it back. So I've introduced you to intersectionality. I've introduced you to intersectionality because I want to think about these beings not as categorically understood as pure, yes? You can see the obsession of whiteness with purity, yes? That's what the one drop is, yes? You know, one drop, you know, and you say, "You're not one of us," you know? So that obsession with purity goes also into the thinking, yes? So now we have these beings that are impure, yes? and that are also in relation to communities where the knowledge that they share it, yes? It's not that it's a presupposition of shared knowledge. No, there is a task of sharing knowledge, yes? But that takes the people individually as, so far, yes, as wise, that they have something to contribute in understanding what it is that they're doing in life. Oh, I have to stop. How about I stop here? Yes, I have at least half to say, but I think the conversation is very important to me. So how about I stop here? Yes. One thing that I wanted to share with you, I haven't said much about the fact that I'm so sick, but I have decided that I want to write more before I go, and so I want to write a piece on communality, the communal, yes, and then I have to talk to Rolando and Walter about, I think I have a book with all the writings that I have to add, a couple of things, and I need for you to help me with adding the couple of things that I have said about women of color in these years, if there is a way of accessing that, So I decided that I would spend the time that we are together writing, so we're together and then, go lie down for a little while and then I write, yes? And I take this time, yes, as a really vibrant time for me. I have been alone for over 3 months. I don't see anybody. Unless it's on the screen, I don't see anybody because people are very, are very dangerous to me, So writing, it doesn't come that difficult to me, but I had all these things to do, I decided Middelburg is not going to be that way. I'm going to have this space where I have these conversations and I write, yes? So I want to, after it's all over, I want to keep on doing it, yes, with you guys in mind, and maybe with some conversation, yes? Okay. So anyway, let's talk. Thank you.